Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first edition of the Ed Sports Talk Show. And gloomy and rainy day here in Bed-Stuy. Uh, with this New York City weather, it's the only city that seems to have the four seasons in 1 week. So you can't really expect it. Tomorrow will be summer. The next day might be spring. It's just been insane. I am Eddie Castro. I think it's important within this first episode that I give a brief intro as far as who I am. That way, you guys have a better understanding of who I am and what this show is going to really incorporate. So, again, my name is Eddie Castro. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I love sports. It's been pretty much the highlight of my life ever since I was 6 years old. I remember sitting down in the house with my uncle watching Derek Jeter and the Yankees back in '96. And obviously, as a kid around my age, between the ages of 9 and like 12 and 13, who didn't watch the Bulls in the '90s, right? Yeah, I'm definitely excited. This is a long time coming. I've been with Our Time Press for going on 15 years now. I hope I didn't give up my age in the process. But yeah, so we have a lot to get into. I, I know everybody wants to just dive into the big story, which was last night's game. But I want to show a little love for the Mets and Yankee fans because that was also a big thing that happened this week. Before we get into it, I just want to say happy belated Mother's Day to all the ladies out there. Happy Mother's Day. And if you're tuning in, thank you so, so much for tuning in. And hopefully I can give you a little more knowledge to, incorporate that towards dinner with the hubby and stuff like that. So, okay. So, Mets and Yankees. Obviously, the headline was Juan Soto signing that big 15-year, $760 million contract with the Mets, departed the Yankees after the Yankees got him via trade with the San Diego Padres. I always find it so surreal that there's always these rumors circulating, all these big-time stories that come out while the series is going on. I'll get into that in a bit. The first game, the Yankees took that game. The Mets won the second match. And on Sunday Night Baseball, led by Clay Bellinger's grand slam, the Yankees completed the 2 out of 3 set against the Mets. So that was a big deal. Obviously, Yankee fans, they showed out, and they pretty much let Juan Soto know how he felt. Listen, we all know the type of talent that Juan Soto is. It's a lot of money, a lot of expectations. Anytime a marquee player of his caliber that comes into New York is always going to be, hey, you got to perform from us. That's just the prototypical New York sports fans of how they're going to think. And I think, judging from the body language of these fans, a lot of people felt betrayed in a sense where, you're batting second behind arguably the greatest player in the earth in Aaron Judge. And after 1 year, you just up and leave. And I thought it was insane how when he got up at that first at bat over by the right field bleachers, it must have been a handful of fans that just turned their back on him literally while he got up to bat. So it was a crazy but fun Subway series. If you guys are ever in the Bronx, there's a pretty neat and pretty energizing bar called Brewski's. Shout out to everybody at Brewski's. They took care of myself, my fiance, and some family members. It was a great time. You had one television that had baseball game. You had the second television that had the Knicks Celtics. It was just a great environment. If you want to do something and not be in a house and get that baseball life enthusiasm, Brewski's is definitely a place to go. So, yeah. So Juan Soto, his numbers, he went 1 for 10 with 3 strikeouts. Now, obviously, if you're a Yankee fan, you're thrilled about this because it's just like, this is where you wanted to go. This is what you sign up for. And trust me, Yankee fans will let you know whether they appreciate your play or not. And if you leave the way he did, they're gonna let you know about that too. So definitely not the numbers that one sort of expected. I think there's a little exaggeration going on with the Mets fans as far as his play currently. Listen, you sign a big contract, you're in New York. It takes a little while for a player, especially of his caliber, to perhaps live up that contract. But he's 26 years old. He's arguably one of the most feared, if not the most feared hitter, aside from Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani, that we'll probably see in a lifetime. Met fans, he's going to be all right. He's going to trust. I'm a Yankee fan, but at the end of the day, we all pro New York on this side. So he's going to be all right. The Mets will bounce back. I believe they still have the best record in the National League currently, although they dropped 2 out of 3 to Boston after dropping 2 out of 3 to the Yankees. It's a long season. Every team is going to have these funks. I'm sure the Yankees are going to have their funk as well as every other team. So, Met fans, just brace yourself. Juan Soto will be all right. I'm pretty sure when it's all said and done, his batting average is going to be the 300s. He'll probably hit 30 home runs, and he'll be the usual suspect type of hitter that we're known and accustomed to seeing with Juan Soto. Aaron Judge, I mean, this guy, if you thought this guy couldn't get better, he just finds a way to just get better. It's insane what he's doing. He's batting over 400. He went yard in last night's game against Texas. And the Yankees are sitting pretty good in a division where it was supposed to be a little bit better, but currently the Yankees are the only team that is above 500 within that division. And more recent, the Yankees were able to pick up a 1-0 victory this afternoon against the Texas Rangers to take that 3-game sweep from Texas. The Yankees are now 10 games above 500 with a win-loss record of 29-19. The Yankees will now take their talents to the Mount High City where they'll play against the Colorado Rockies. Yeah, not a pretty good team as Colorado, but at the end of the day, you'll still have to go out and play the games. So I believe the next Subway Series, I can't recall, don't know exactly right off the head when it'll be. It's usually a summer event, but the 3-game set will take place in Citi Field, in which the Mets will try to avenge losing 2 out of 3 to the New York Yankees. So that said, you got both baseball teams currently in first place. I'll be honest, I did not expect the Yankees to be this good right now. I thought they were going to be right where they were supposed to be, maybe a little bit lower. I'll be honest with you. I thought with the injuries and the departure of Juan Soto, I thought this was going to be the Yankees were going to struggle a little bit. But as much as I pull what's left of my hair when it comes to Aaron Boone and his managerial styles, he always finds a way to get his team to play for him. And I think that's the best contributing factor that you can have when your players are willing to play for you. I mean, Aaron Judge is batting 400. He's got 16 home runs. I believe he's second currently in the league in RBI. And if you look at all his statistics currently, he is number 1 in every single category. That's batting average, that's home runs, and that's RBI as far as the American League. So I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we haven't seen a triple crown in quite a long time. So it would be nice to see that, especially somebody in a Yankee uniform winning it. I believe the last time it happened was a few years back. I believe it was Miguel Cabrera who took that rare honor winning the Triple Crown. Listen, Triple Crown is hard to win. You got to, first and foremost, health is always number one. You got to stay healthy. You got to stay consistent, especially when you batting for average, you're hitting for power and driving in runs while still trying to be a coveted leader for the team and still thrive to get these wins. So it's a grueling season. Major League Baseball is 162 games. So, a lot of luck, a lot of health, and a lot of dedication goes into having the season that Aaron Judge is having. I mean, it wasn't well, I think we're 3 years old, give or take, where he broke the single season American League record of 62 home runs. And then last year, he followed up again with another 58 home run year, which is just amazing because nowadays it's not like how the 90s were, where you had great players like Ken Griffey Jr., you had Mark McGuire, you had Sammy Sosa, you had Barry Bonds, and they were like walking 50 home run guys. Now it's, if want to take a couple of players out of a hat, Otani will probably be one. Judge obviously will probably be one. Santander, even though he's going through a little drought in Toronto, I think he possibly potentially could still hit the 40, 50 home run plateau. So it's good to see that nostalgic come back to Major League Baseball where you're actually seeing guys who can hit for power. So as long as Aaron Judge stays healthy, which I think all Yankee fans are hoping at this point, um, I don't know if he'll get to the Triple Crown, but geez, if he's going at the route that he's going, he'll damn sure be close to it. That's for sure. That is for sure. Um, Mets fans, they got a lot going on with their lineup. Pete Alonso is just tearing the cover off the baseball. As you know, Pete Alonso and the Mets, they were in a little bit of a discrepancy during the offseason about a contract extension. Eventually, it led to Alonso re-signing with the team for 3 years, $90 million contract, if I'm not mistaken, with the opt-out clause after this year. And it almost seems like Pete Alonso is playing with a chip on his shoulder. I mean, he's just playing very well. He's playing good baseball, and I guess you can always feel like he felt some type of way with that shadow that the Mets put over him when they acquired Juan Soto. So he's definitely playing with a chip on his shoulder. He's definitely playing for the bag, as the young kids say nowadays. So it's interesting to see how his season goes. He hasn't had a really good week. He had the routine ground ball throw to home plate, which allowed the Yankees to score those runs late in the inning in that last game. And then he had another situation where he had another ground ball to first during the game in Boston, where he threw it over the first baseman's head. So listen, it happens. Errors is a part of the game. Peter Alonso is going to be fine. You have a well balanced lineup. You have Peter Alonso. You have Juan Soto. You have Francisco Lindor. Mark Vientos looks like he's getting out of the funk that he was early in the year. And Alvarez, when you get Alvarez healthy, he's top five catcher in the league. So Met fans, don't be so discouraged, man. Show a little enthusiasm for your team. Show a little. They're gonna be fine. They're the best league. They're the best team right now in baseball. Winning record. They're the best team in baseball right now. In what I consider the most difficult division in all of baseball. You have the Philadelphia Phillies, who's a playoff contender. The Atlanta Braves, especially when they get Ronald Acuna back, they're slated to be a World Series contender. And then not only that, but in the National League, you got some good hit. You got some hard hitting teams, man. You got obviously the world champion Dodgers, who defeated the Mets in last year's National League Championship Series. I don't mean to put that out there, Met fans, but you gotta do what you gotta do. But who's to say that the Mets can't contend with these guys? They're just as good with them, and they're in first place without two top tier pitchers, potentially top tier pitchers. They got Frankie Montas, who they signed away from the Cincinnati Reds, and they got Sean Manaea, who they re-up on a contract deal and pretty much reinvented his career. After he pitched a few years in Oakland, he sort of like bounced around for a couple of years, and he eventually found himself in his last year and ultimately found a home here in New York. So you like to hear those true underdog stories where there's a pitcher who is subpar struggling, and then he becomes this true sequential underdog hero and just pitches lights out. And that's exactly what he did. So essentially, when he comes back, he is the Mets ace. And that's obviously pending if the Mets were to go out and make any trades during the summer. I believe the trade deadline is normally the last week of July. So there's still room for the Mets to get better. I believe there's still room for the Mets to get better. Right now, they're in a little funk, and as I reiterated a little while ago, it's 162 games. No team is going to go 162 and 0. I can assure you of that. So, it's going to be excited to see how the season unfolds and to see how this team meshes. And you got to consider the fact that Juan Soto hasn't had a Juan Soto type of month yet. If Juan Soto heats up, is only going to thrive this offense, which is doing great. I believe they average close to 5 runs a game, or if not more. So when you get a guy like Juan Soto, once he starts warming up, and you add that with already hot Francisco Lindor, who's batting over 300, Pete Alonso, who's creeping towards 280 or something like that, and then you add Juan Soto and the potential that Juan Soto brings to that Mets ball club, they're going to be a scary, scary team. So although they're in probably the most difficult division in baseball, I think the Mets, health permitting, will be just fine. They'll be just fine. So that's going to wrap it up for the Mets and Yankees. I want to get into last night's game. Well, first and foremost, the city was just absolutely electric last Friday. Like I said, you had the Celtics and the Knicks. The Knicks closing out the Celtics. You had the Yankee game going on. It was just absolutely electric. I had a buddy of mine who was in 34th Street. He was at the watch party, and he sent me a video of this guy. I don't know how he did it, but he found his way on top of a billboard right on 34th Street. It was just insane to say the least. But listen, I hear a lot of criticism, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, well, Knicks fans, they over exaggerate. They act like they won the world championship." You got to remember, this is the first time the Knicks have been in this situation in the Eastern Conference Finals since 1999. I was 11. Okay, so let's put that into perspective. I was 11 years old, and it was the 19 where they eventually fell to Tim Duncan and David Robinson's San Antonio Spurs, probably one of the greatest teams that was ever assembled during the end of the 90s into the 2000s. So, for those fans who seem a little disgruntled or feeling a little waged, like, listen, let the Knicks fans have some fun, man. Let them cook just a little bit. Just a little bit. This is something that they haven't seen in about a quarter of a century. I'll be honest with you, I was a little bit hesitant to actually select them against Boston because Boston is just so fully equipped. They're like a well-oiled machine. But I'm telling you, the way the Knicks played and their defensive tenacity, especially when it came to Jaylen Brown, which is amazing. I mean, they just stuck on those players like a pair of church socks. It was just insane. It was crazy. And it was impressive to say the least, where they went into a hostile environment. From my experience watching basketball, I always felt back in my day, not to say that I'm that old, but I'm getting a little up there. But back in my day, the most difficult arenas, at least just from watching it at home, was the old Key Arena back in the Seattle days. All those 90s basketball fans know what I'm talking about. The Key Arena in Seattle was probably one of the loudest places to play in. Then obviously you have our Arco Arena in Sacramento. Utah, from what I've heard, is also a loud place to be at. And those Boston fans, they bring it. They bring it every night. So the fact that the Knicks went in there and they were able to win the first 2 games led by Jalen Brunson's impeccable scoring. And also, listen, shout out to Mikal Bridges. You talk about a guy who's been through a lot of scrutiny. Mikal Bridges has probably been the most scrutinized Knicks all year round. Obviously, we know the scoring that he brings and the defensive mentality that he brings. But this guy, he's played about over 850 plus games. He hasn't missed a game since his high school days. He's pretty much the modern day Iron Man. And there was a lot of scrutiny because he didn't play so well during the game. And remember, the Knicks gave up 4 number ones to Lord Bridges out from Brooklyn and put him in a Knicks uniform to put him side by side by another defensive girl in OG Anunoby. So you equip those two, and Bridges can easily give you 15, potentially 20 points a night, and you put that aside with Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns. It is a good recipe to have if you're Coach Tom Thibodeau. But last night, I'm just trying to stomach just what the hell went on. The Knicks were up by 17 points with 6:26 to go in the fourth quarter. Aaron Nesmith of the Indiana Pacers became the second coming of Steph Curry. He had 6 3-pointers in that fourth quarter, 8 for 9 for the game. And then Tyrese Halliburton does this amazing step back, which I still feel like is a travel weather day, but tomato, still an amazing shot. It hits the top of the iron, goes in, just a quarter inch from behind, just ending the game, and just putting Spike Lee and the rest of those Knicks fans in disarray. I think the Knicks got real complacent and they got real comfortable. And this is the playoffs. This is the Eastern Conference Finals. 4 more wins and you go to the finals. Neither team that is currently, and this is going for the Western Conference team too, with Minnesota and Oklahoma City. You can't take the foot off the gas. You just can't. And the New York Knicks, their debacle in that fourth quarter was a prime example of exactly what happens when you do that. And just to go about Tyrese Halliburton's heroics, this is the 3rd game this postseason where he has shined the brightest and he has hit a marquee shot to lead the Pacers to a victory. The New York Knicks were up 111-94 with 6 minutes and 26 seconds. I just want to repeat that. They were up by 9 with 59.8 seconds to go in the game. 59.8 seconds to go in the game. And they just got caught off these bad screens, and Aaron Nesmith just made them pay. Tyrese Halliburton had 31 points and 11 assists in the Game 1 victory. Karl Anthony Towns, which I still believe is going to be the key factor in this series, finally showed up. Karl Anthony Towns had 36 points. I believe he had 10-plus rebounds. And you need that scoring duo to take the load off of Jalen Brunson. And I just want to get on Jalen Brunson a little bit. I get that this is the playoffs, but you got to put yourself in a situation where you can't get into foul trouble, because there was about 4 or 5 minutes where he picked up his 5th foul at a crucial point within the game, and he sat out most of that fourth quarter. Tom Thibodeau did not want to risk having your best player pick up that 6th and final foul, and then you're left with Miles McBride. Not to say that he's not capable. Miles McBride is a good defender. Obviously, he's known for his shooting. He's shooting 52% from the floor, 50% from the 3-point, at least with those numbers from the Boston series. But you got to put yourself in a situation where you're available. And let's face it, Jalen Brunson, he is the Knicks. He's a pivotal reason of why they are where they are now. He proved that yesterday when he dropped a 40-piece on Indiana in a losing effort. But there's no excuse with this Knicks. It wasn't that they looked tired. They turn over the ball in crucial times during the game. And with this current Indiana's team, where they rather play a much faster pace, as where the New York Knicks, they just want to rebound and slow down the pace a little bit and move the ball around, they're going to make you pay. They're going to make you pay. That's pretty much Indiana Pacers' style of playing basketball. They like to run and gun. And if you make turnovers against this type of Indiana Pacers team, coming off a very impressive series win against the number 1 seeded Cleveland Cavaliers, listen, the Indiana Pacers, they on one right now. They're on one right now. So I do think the Knicks will learn from Game Two, which will be tomorrow night. And let's face it, the Knicks gotta have this. They ultimately have to have this game. You can't go. We all know what it is to try to get back into a series where you're down 2-0 and you lose your first two games at home. And just food for thought, even though these numbers tend to change on a year by year basis, the team that wins the first game of the series ends up winning the series 72% of the time. So obviously, in more recent stats, it doesn't seem like it goes on the Knicks' favor, but you still got to go out there and play the games. And I do believe that the Knicks will fix those miscues that they had during that fourth quarter, and they will get better. I do expect OG Anunoby to improve. I get it. You're probably the best defensive player, but you have so much potential, man. You got so much potential. We need that OG who's going to be a dog for us. We need that OG that's going to give you 15, 20 points, because it's going to get to a point where, as far as the defensive matchups, where you're going to see the Pacers focus on Brunson. And if you really focus on how the game began, they were putting a lot of doubles towards Brunson, which means that they're counting on someone like a Anunoby, like a Bridges, like a Josh Hart to just come in and take the load off of Brunson as far as the scoring goes. But just just a very unfortunate loss for the Knicks. You had Tyrese Halliburton bringing out the choke Colaselli that Reggie Miller brought out back in the 90s. It was just crazy. Spike Lee just looked absolutely disgruntled. There was also one fan in the stands where he was just shaking his head and just in complete disgruntled. But it was a unfortunate time for the Knicks to just let a game like that, where they pretty much had in control pretty much the whole entire game. They were up by 17, and everything seemed to be going smooth sailing. Karl-Anthony Towns probably had his best, well, without a doubt, he had his best game in this playoff so far. And Brunson came to show out, but you got to take care of the ball. Ultimately, what faltered into the Knicks going down to the Pacers was the lack of intensity and just the lack of desperation as far as guarding the 3-point line. I mean, you have one guy making 6 threes in the fourth quarter, a guy that no one really expected to perform like that. I mean, you think of the Pacers, obviously you think about Tyrese Halliburton, you think about Miles McBride, Andrew Nenhard has also been a thorn in the Knicks' side in recent games. And Pat O'Connell, I think he's definitely been one too, as far as being a thorn on the Knicks side. But Aaron Nesmith, and again, I'm not saying it like he's a tomato can. The kid knows how to play. Just an impressive performance by him to knock out 6 3-pointers in that fourth quarter, 8 of 9 to go with that. I think he had a career high 31. So he came out to ball, and Knicks just didn't have an answer for him. For whatever reason, they just simply did not have an answer. So I do think there's going to be an adjustment by Tom Thibodeau. I do think they're going to feature more Halliburton and definitely have an eye on Nesmith moving forward within the rest of this series. But I'm telling you guys this right now. If the Knicks do not correct this, we're going to look back at that game from last night, and we're going to say this is the reason why they lost the game. It's just plain and simple. You can't. This is the playoffs. I think this is the first time since 1998 where a team was able to win a playoff game while being down by 7 points. So that's impeccable to say the least. That's impeccable to say the least. The Pacers, as a team, this is the third time they've done it in this series where they were able to win a game by being down 9 points in the fourth quarter or overtime. They did it to close out the Milwaukee Bucks in a 119-118 victory, sending Giannis and the Bucks home. And they also did it against the Cavaliers. So it goes to show you that this Pacer team is a very gritty team, and they're gonna play 48 minutes. And that's exactly what the Knicks didn't do. They didn't play 48 minutes. They played 42 as opposed to 48, with those last minutes being very crucial and ultimately deciding the 138-135 victory for the Indiana Pacers. So game two will be tomorrow night at Madison Square Garden. The Pacers have a 1-0 lead, obviously, and I just think it's very important for the Knicks to start off fast. Ultimately, this playoff series, the Knicks have gotten to very slow starts, hence the two 20-point droughts that they were down to by the Boston Celtics. Ultimately, they did win the game, but as a team collectively, it does weigh on you to be able to play that well and also try to play turnover-free basketball. It's quite difficult. It takes a toll on you as a team. Um, I think Karl Anthony Towns, the situation with him is the fouls. He's got to stay out of foul trouble. I know Brunson has been having those issues within the past 2 games, but ultimately it's just been the silly fouls that Towns has picked up, especially in the crucial situations. And let's face it, the Knicks are going to go as far as those two take 'em, with Towns and Brunson. That's their bread and butter. That's the team that ultimately got them there, and they have a good nucleus around them with OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, and Josh Hart. I can't say nothing about Josh Hart. I mean, he's just been amazing. I think because of the heroics of Towns and Brunson, he sort of is not talked about as much as he should, but he does all he does all the cleanup stuff. He had 8 rebounds uh, yesterday, and ultimately these rebounds that he gets is just so vicious, and he plays with so much heart. No pun intended. But Josh Hart is definitely one of my favorite Knicks in this current roster. He took a nasty shot in the last series where he got opened up a little bit, and he missed a few minutes, came back and finished it just like any other New Yorker will. That's what New Yorkers are about. We're tough. We're tough. We're strong. And I think that's what Josh Hart brings to this current Knicks team is that toughness and that tenacity that Anthony Mason brought back in the 90s. Latrell Sprewell of that sort. So definitely see a lot of similarities between this current New York Knicks roster and the 99 New York Knicks. I mean, listen, 99 New York Knicks, man, that was just such a cool team. You had Allen Houston, you had Sprewell, you had the Ewing, you had Starks, I believe. So, yeah, I believe ultimately, regardless of what happened last night, I do believe this series is going to go 7 games. I just feel like both of these teams, they're so equally matched. They're tailor made for each other. Ultimately, it just seemed like it was a match made for them to actually meet in the playoffs for a second consecutive year. Um, and if you guys are wrestling fans, it's almost surreal. It almost seemed like WWE called it out. There's an episode of WWE SmackDown live in Madison Square Garden where current wrestler The Miz brought out Tyrese Halliburton, and they just pulled him out of the arena. I mean, just just the guts to have Tyrese Halliburton come in Madison Square Garden 2 weeks removed from the Knicks eliminating the for the Pacers eliminating the Knicks in that Game 7 matchup last year, and then you have the interaction where Jalen Brunson comes in and then they're like squaring off and stuff like that. And now you fast forward into this series, it's kind of tailor made how that happened, and then obviously you put into play the history of these two teams. You look at 1994 when they met in the playoffs, and the Pacers won that series in 7 games. I don't know why Patrick Ewing didn't dunk that ball. He should have dunked that ball that series. But yeah, and then obviously in more recent memory, you have the 1999 series when Larry Johnson hit that 4-point play that catapulted the Knicks to the NBA Finals, which was their last NBA Finals appearance to the San Antonio Spurs. And then obviously you had last year's playoff matchup. Unfortunately, the Knicks were a little unhealthy when it came to that series. OG Anunoby was nursing a hamstring injury. He tried to come back and try to give the Knicks a jolt of energy. Ultimately, he was only able to play 5 minutes that last game. And then to make things even more worse, to add insult to injury, going for a steal, Jalen Brunson ends up fracturing his hand, and then ultimately the Pacers went on and won that series against the Knicks. So I think the key components for the Knicks to be able to take two and to tie this series going into Indiana is they got to play 48 minutes. However they get those 40 minutes, from whomever they get those 48 minutes, they got to play 48 minutes, because last night was a perfect indication of what happens when you take your foot off the gas. And that's pretty much exactly what the Knicks did. It was horrible to watch as a fan. My dad, I was watching the game in my house with my dad, and he was just so disgruntled. I like to throw a little jabs at him and stuff like that, because I got my Nets team and he got his Knicks team. Ultimately, it's all New York at the end of the day, but he's really on the upper echelon as far as his Knicks fandom, and it was just so silent to just see him be so excited, and then just the air that was just poked out of that arena when Halliburton hit that step back 2-pointer to send that game into overtime. It almost took out the air out of that arena, and ultimately the Knicks just made crucial turnovers, which factor into Indiana scoring points off those turnovers, and you just can't do this with this current Indiana team. Again, I can factor it into more than what I'm putting it at. You just simply can't do that. But defense, as you got to defend the 3-point line. The New York Knicks got to defend the 3-point line. There's no way that you get a guy like Aaron Nesmith or anybody at that point to knock down six threes. I mean, I almost felt like I was watching Reggie Miller out there. It almost seemed like time stopped. And shout out to the Indiana Pacers coaching staff. There was a big challenge during the closing minutes of that game where it appeared that an out of bounds play was off the Pacers, but when they checked the initial replay, it clearly went off Jalen Brunson's hand, which catapulted the Pacers coaching staff to challenge, and a challenge which was successful. And Coach Rick Carlisle, shout out to that coaching staff for making that observation and that challenge at that time and point of the game. And it also gave the Indiana Pacers an important possession where they were able to knock down some free throws. And then there was a possession, I think it was about 4 or 3 seconds, where the Knicks had a chance to perhaps hit a game tying 3-pointer shot to send it into double overtime. Mikal Bridges, who has been impeccable in this series as far as his defensive tenacity goes. We all remember those 2 last-minute plays in the first 2 games that he made against the Boston Celtics. Couldn't control the ball. Ultimately, the basketball went out of bounds with 0.3 seconds in possession to Indiana, and ultimately the Indiana Pacers catapulted to the 3-point victory. It was 138-135. And this was probably, and I could be wrong, this was probably the biggest or one of the most famous comebacks that we've seen in a while. I mean, 17 points is 17 points. That's just a lot. And, they were up 111-94 with 6 minutes and 26 seconds to go in the game. Just a very, very, very tough loss for the New York Knicks. But again, it's only one game. There's still hope, and I still believe some way, somehow, the way these teams match up with each other, and just the nostalgic of this series. I mean, listen, playoffs, Pacers, Knicks. baseball, you got Yankees, Red Sox, Yankees, Astros. This is tailor made. This is exactly what the NBA needs right now, just to have these two storied franchises battle it out for a trip to the NBA Finals. So I do think the Knicks are going to make the adjustments, but we also know that Tyrese Halliburton and company, they're going to make their adjustments as well too. So the Indiana Pacers will look to try to take a 2-0 lead, and the Knicks will try to hope that they can tie the series at 1 and head to Indiana. I believe that game 3, not to get ahead of myself, but game 3 will be Sunday at Indiana. So obviously Indiana is, if you saw any indication of that Cavaliers series, especially there was one game, I think it was game 5, where they were up 80-39 against the one-seeded Cavaliers. The one-seeded Cavaliers, 80-39 at halftime. So they got a team. This team, they know how to put the ball in the basket. And I think the pace is going to ultimately decide how the series ultimately ends. Again, as I reiterated, the Pacers, they play more of a fast, up-tempo pace, where the Knicks like to slow it down, especially as far as the roster intake. The Knicks, Tom Thibodeau likes to construct with 6 to 7 players. That's I've seen a lot of people who are screaming and yelling on social media saying, "Oh, why is he resting Towns or why he's resting Brunson?" Tom Thibodeau doesn't really like to go into his bag. He goes to a 6-7 man rotation, and he really is relying on the heavy minutes for his starting lineup. Whereas you saw last night from Rick Carlisle's Indiana Pacers squad, they usually go about 8 to 9 deep as far as how they construct their roster and things of that nature. But we can't say that's an advantage, because at the end of the day, the Knicks got to where they got with this 6 to 7 man rotation, which has worked for the most part. It's just being able to finish, and it's kind of difficult. Isn't it almost surreal that we're even saying that, because that's what we were saying about the first 2 games of last series, where the Knicks were down double digits, 20-point leads to the Boston Celtics, and that's what we were saying about the Celtics. So it's funny how history is sort of repeating itself, ally be against on the Knicks side, but ultimately this is not to panic. But I will say this: if the New York Knicks does not win tomorrow night's game at Madison Square Garden, one of the loudest places to play at, with the number 1 scorer in Jalen Brunson, the number 1 scorer in this current playoffs, it's time to press the panic button. It'll be time to press the panic button. But I just don't see how the Knicks lose 2 games in a row at Madison Square Garden. They know the history. They know what it means to this current fan base. They know what it means to the organization to be in this spotlight, to be in the conference finals. 25 years in the making. I think the Knicks find a way to pull it out. I think Brunson is who he's going to be. I expect for him to throw 25 piece. I expect Karl Anthony Towns to compliment him. But the Knicks do need a number 3 option. And right now, it's sort of like juggling between Anunoby and Bridges. And during their rest time, especially how the Knicks have their bench, listen, obviously you're going to get the energy from Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson is a rebound guru. And I think he is so important as far as his rebound efficiency when he's on the floor. Not saying that Karl Anthony Towns is a bad rebounder, but Mitchell Robinson just takes the rebounding for this current team on another level. And you could tell the difference from when he missed a good chunk of the season recovering from off-season ankle surgery. You could see how much he was missed as far as them gains that you saw from the beginning of the season to what we're currently seeing from him right now. So Mitchell Robinson is definitely playing exceptional basketball. I think a lot of people, criticize and gets on him with his free throws and stuff like that. So, yeah, ultimately, I think the Knicks are gonna prevail, but you just can't have what happened last night. There's just no excuse. There's just no excuse with the Tyrese Halliburton choke celebration that Reggie Miller pulled out. There's just no excuse for the Knicks to ultimately lose that game. But I do think they'll bounce back tomorrow live at Madison Square Garden, 8 o'clock p.m. It's going to be an amazing, amazing game to watch. In closing, I just want to thank everybody. You know, okay, yeah. So we're gonna do some calling right now, and see what the New York Phantom has to say about last night's game. Yeah. So well, as we figure that out, to talk a little bit more about that Knicks Pacers series. Again, Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby has to be the key factor. Although I do think Karl Anthony Towns is the number one factor as far as the Knicks making their first finals appearance since 2000. I do think that, listen, everybody needs a Robin. We all get caught up in Jordan's time with the Bulls in the 90s, but how many of those games and those pivotal points that he had Scottie Pippen? Same thing with Kobe and the Lakers. Shaq and Kobe, they had each other ultimately. So I think we are ready for calls, right? Okay. Hi, how are you? I'm doing well. Thank you for calling the Ed Sports Show. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you calling in. Are we talking about the series in general as far as the final four teams or just this particular Knicks and Pacers series? So I do think because these teams are so evenly matched, you got Carl Anthony Towns with Miles Turner, you got Mikal Bridges or OG Anunoby that could take defensive tries against Pascal Siakam. Listen, Pascal Siakam is a dog, and he's a former NBA champion. So, he has 20 points a game. He can still score. So the way they're evenly matched, I do think it's going to be a long series. It would not surprise me if this series goes 7. Ultimately, I think, it's going to come down to the two stars. I think it's going to come down to almost like this nostalgic Tyson Holyfield from the 90s when it comes to Jalen Brunson and Tyrese Halliburton. But ultimately, I just think it's New York's time, man. It's like what Stephen A. Smith on ESPN says. It's orange and blue skies. It's orange and blue skies. But ultimately, I do think the Knicks, if they play their brand of basketball and not get caught up into the pace of the way the Pacers play, no pun intended, but listen, the Pacers, they're a very fast-paced team. And if you really pay attention to last night's game, especially that second quarter, OG Anunoby almost looked gassed. So the Knicks got to play their way of basketball. They got to play their brand of basketball, and they ultimately have to defend the three-point line. I think obviously that killed them yesterday with Aaron Nesmith hitting 6 3-pointers in that pivotal quarter for them, which ultimately led to the Pacers' heroic comeback. But to answer your question, I do think the Knicks will take it into 7, but I do believe rebounding, pace, and ultimately defense is going to be a contributing factor as far as the Knicks being able to pull off the season victory. Thank you so much for calling in. All right, man. That was pretty cool. Got your first call in and stuff like that. But yeah. So it's gonna be it's gonna be one of those type of series. I don't know if you guys remember the Knicks Heat series in the '90s and how grueling those were. And you know what? That's another thing that I want to talk about. I On my way here, I seen something because I read a lot of stuff on social media as far as sports and stuff like that, and I seen somebody commented about as far as the referees and the physicality. This is playoff basketball. Okay, this is playoff basketball. This is the same way that it was designed back in the '90s, where it was neck and neck as far as officiating and stuff like that. So if you're a basketball fan, now obviously there were some calls missed on both sides. There were some calls missed on both sides. There was one play where the Pacers were playing full court press, and Brunson was bringing it up, and clearly Brunson got hit in the face by unintentionally by Aaron Neesmith, and there was no foul call. Listen, there are going to be calls that are going to be missed. It's the playoffs. But if you're a natural basketball fan, you want this series to be called the way it is. You don't want it to be foul after foul, because then it slows up the pace and ultimately the excitement of this series. So let the referees do what they got to do. Ultimately, it's the Knicks and the Pacers who are going to throw up them shots and ultimately catapult their team to the victory. So listen, whoever is saying that, just come on. Come on. One minute is like, well, the referees are too soft. Now it's too physical. This is for the Larry O'Brien Trophy. This is for the biggest crown jewel in the National Basketball Association. This is why you do all the grinding, all the training at minicamp, all the off-season workouts, all 82 games that you are projected to play. You play for moments like this. And as we've seen in the last series, it's going to get nasty. There's going to be a few bumps and bruises. But I guarantee you, Tyrese Halliburton ain't complaining about it. Miles Turner ain't complaining about it. Jalen Brunson ain't complaining about it. Karl Anthony Towns ain't complaining about it, because this is pretty much what the playoffs are all about. Truthfully speaking, the physicality and just the science that come with the defensive adjustments that both teams are making actually makes it exciting for me. Now, if it's a situation where you're making a call and it's missed in a crucial part of the game, then that's when I get it. But if it's something like a soft tap, then that's when I get all the criticism as far as the officiating and what's going on. But for the most part, I feel like the officials are letting them play. And that's just old school New York basketball. That's cage basketball up on West 4th Street. That's street basketball at its finest. And I think if you ask Jalen Brunson and the Knicks, they wouldn't have it any other way. So let's pump down on all the officiating. But I just want to take this time to just thank everybody. Again, I've been with OTP for 14 years now. It seemed like it's been a breeze. I also want to thank, my family, my friends that got me to this point right now. This is something that has been in the works for a long time. This is something that I've always wanted to do. To the fan base, I want to thank you guys so much. Thank you so much. I also want to shout out PJ, who's constructing all this stuff. She's doing all this stuff for us to making sure this show is as successful as possible. She also has a YouTube channel of her own, so you guys got to check that out. It's pretty good stuff, pretty awesome stuff. So shout out to PJ, shout out to David Greaves, and just thank you guys for everything, and thank you for tuning in. And for my fan base, what I can promise you is 100% authenticity. I'm going to be authentic how it is. I'm going to criticize and I'm going to compliment as I go. This is New York Sports. and I promise that I'm gonna give you everything that I have. In the meantime, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and also tune into our Instagram page. Tune into our Instagram page, Our Time Press, to see this episode, whether you want to see it again or not, or just get everything formed for next week's episode. But again, thank you to everybody that made this happen. This is definitely an honor, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. All right?